We'll start with Omkar Prarthana. We'll start with Omkar Prarthana. Shuklam Bharadharam Vishnum Shashivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannavadanam Dhyaye Sarvavighnopashantaye Agajanana Padmarkam Gajanana Maharnisham Anekadantam Bhaktanam Ekadanta Upasmahe Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sai Brahma Sai Vishnu Sai Devo Maheshwaraha Sai Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Sai Namaha Shri Sachidananda Sadguru Sainath Maharaj Ki Jai. Om Sai Ram. Welcome to all Sai devotees and friends across the world who have joined us today for a very special satsang with Dr. Antonio Rigopoulos. Dr. Antonio Rigopoulos lives in Venice, Italy. He is a professor by profession in the Foscari University of Venice, teaching Sanskrit and Indian religions and philosophies. He did his MA and PhD at the University of California, Santa Barbara. He is the author of the book, Oral Testimonies on Sai Baba, published in 2020. The interviews and original audio recordings comprised in this volume are the outcome of a field research in Maharashtra and Andhra Pradesh, which he conducted in October-November 1985 for the preparation of his BA thesis on the life and teachings of Shirdi Sai Baba. In Shirdi and surrounding areas, he was accompanied by a local interpreter who led him from house to house and who translated the words of the respondents from Marāṭhī to English. This book can be downloaded free of cost, as Shri Antonio Rigopoulos wanted all Sai devotees across the world to have easy access to it and get the opportunity to read it. He had the opportunity to interview first-hand devotees of Baba who actually spent time and spoke with Baba. Some notable devotees he interviewed include Marthanda Malzapati, son of Malzapati, Uttar Deshpande, Shama's son, Shivanesan Swami, Balaji Pillaji Gurav, and many more. He has also authored and published other books and articles on Dattatreya and Sai Baba. Welcome, Dr. Antonio. It's a pleasure to have you. It's a pleasure and honor to have you in this satsang. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure and my honor to be with you and to share some of my thoughts and experiences of those days.
Yes. So we'll start off. I'm sure a lot of people would like to know more about why did you start the research on Sai Baba specifically? And if you could take us through a little bit of your journey as to how you started on your thesis with Sai Baba, the need to know more about Baba. It'll be very instructive to all of us.
Well, I was always a religiously inclined person. And once I entered university, I enrolled in history, and I was particularly interested in history of religions. So I had the opportunity in Venice University to meet two professors of history of religions that were very important to me. One was a specialist in Judaism, Franco Michelini Tocci, but who was also very keen in meditation and was also very interested in yoga and Eastern contemplative practices. And the other professor of mine, who was really most important, was Mario Piantelli, who is a specialist of Hinduism, that is, of religions and philosophies of India. And through these two professors, I was more and more drawn into the study of Indian religions in the first half of the 80s. And when it came to select a topic for my BA thesis, of course, I discussed about it with my professor, mainly Mario Piantelli, the Indologist. And he suggested to me, since he knew that I was interested in Indian teachers and gurus and in modern and contemporary spirituality, he suggested to me that I should select as my topic of my thesis what he regarded, and of course he was right, the most popular saint of modern and contemporary India, that is Shirdi Sai Baba. And so it was really Mario Piantelli who, in a way, inspired my research. And of course, I was very enthusiastic about this idea. And to me, it was something really like something like a gift to have this opportunity to deal and to study with Mario Piantelli on this saintly figure of India. And so I started around 1983 to collect all possible information and articles and primary and secondary sources, mainly in English, but also in other languages, on Shirdi Sai. So between 83 and 85, I gathered everything I could find on the life and teachings of Shirdi Sai, and also on medieval, modern, and contemporary Maharashtra, to focus on the cultural area of Maharashtra and of Shirdi. I was also studying Hindi at the time. I had a kind of basic knowledge of Hindi, but very, very superficial. And I remember one of the major sources for me was a book that was edited by Narasimha Swami of 1942, which is called Shri Sai Baba's Charters and Sayings. That was a most important source book for me. And in fact, I also translated it into Italian, trying to order it in topics from A to Z. And so this was how it all began.
Okay, thank you. Very nice. So let's get to the oral testimonies on Sai Baba itself. It is very wonderful that you actually interviewed people in Shirdi, devotees in Shirdi, who had first-hand experience with Baba, those who lived during Baba's time and saw Baba. And in your book, there are quite a few of such devotees like Uddhavrao Deshpande, whom you interviewed. So when you interviewed Uddhavrao Deshpande, can you let us know, like, what were the salient points about Baba, and the information that he gave? If you can summarize your conversation with him, it will be very interesting for all Sai devotees.
First of all, let me say that after having this work done on the available sources, my professors invited me to go to India and to do a field research in Shirdi to try to find out if there were old villagers who were still alive and who had known Sai Baba. So this was what brought me to India in October 1985. And I prepared myself with a full set of questions I wanted to ask the old villagers about Sai Baba's life and teachings. And thanks to an Indian family, the Agrawal family from Bombay, who were friends of my family and of myself, I was able to reach Bombay and then travel around Maharashtra and then arrive safely in Shirdi on October 15, 1985. And once I got there, I was able to find some local interpreters to guide me. And so I started my inquiries by going from house to house and visiting these old people. And one of the first ones that I found, and I went to his house, was Uddhavrao, Uddhav, and he was 79 years old at the time. He's the son of the famous Shama Deshpande. He was 12, Uddhav, when Baba took Samadhi in 1918. It was a wonderful conversation, very pleasant. He was extremely hospitable. He and his wife opened their house to me, offered me chai. We had a very nice conversation. In fact, I realized right away that all my questions that I had written down were not really of much use, were too theoretical, too intellectual. And what I realized is that Uddhav, as well as all of the other villagers, really had a very direct and simple relationship to Sai Baba. There was no theory. There was no intellectual kind of interest in the teaching, for example. Uddhav told me that there was no teaching. What was his personal relation with Shirdi Sai was based on blessings. Shirdi Sai gave out blessings, Ashirvad and Udi. And what he insisted most was on some personal experiences he had concerning help he had received from Sai Baba during his life. And I would say he mentioned three main things. The first one was Sai Baba's extraordinary charisma, his piercing eyes, his drishti. Wow. And in fact, he told to me when I asked him, who is Sai Baba to you, for you? He answered that for him, Sai Baba is Sakshat Bhagavan, that is God in bodily form. Abolte and Chalte Dev, that is a God who speaks and walks around. And for him, being in the presence of Sai felt like being in the presence of Bhagavan, of God himself. The second thing that I'd like to point out is that Uddhav underlined the point of service. He said that his father, Shama, just before dying, asked him to serve the Sansthan totally for free, without asking a single paisa for service. So Uddhav stressed this point and said, I have been serving the Shirdi Sansthan for 40 years now, totally for free and in a spirit of devotion and surrender to Sai. And this is the most important thing that he wanted me to observe, to notice. And third, I would say he insisted on the couplet of Nishta and Saburi, of faith and courage, of patience, as being the cornerstone of Sai Baba's teaching, underlying the fact that what is most important is to live a life of surrender to Shirdi Sai and to always constantly remember his name and form. So he insisted, as most of the villagers did, on the practice of Swadhyaya, of reading the Shri Sai Satcharita, and of remembering constantly the name of Sai. So I would say these were the three main things he underlined to me. And I should add the fact that I was very blessed on that occasion, because I also had the opportunity of meeting at Uddhav's house Mr. Baldev Girme and his wife, who were from Kopergaon, devotees of Sai, and they were so helpful to me by leading me to various other places in Shirdi and also in Sakuri, and helping me with my research, presenting me various other saintly people. So I was really blessed in Shirdi because everybody was so helpful and so nice to me, so that through Baldev Girma and his wife, for instance, I was able to meet Appa Boravke. I was able to meet later on in Mumbai, Swami Ram Baba. And so one thing led to the other. And so that my very first day in Shirdi on the 16th of October of 1985 was really an most important date, because I first met Uddhav and then all these other people.
Oh, wow, that's very beautiful. So you mentioned October 16th, 1985 was your first day in Shirdi.
Well, I arrived on the 15th,
Uh-huh.
but very late at night. And I took a room within the area of Shirdi. I was lucky to find a place, but the place was getting very, very crowded because the Punyatiti celebrations were coming up.
Wow.
That year, I think it was celebrated on October 21st.
Oh, okay. So before we go to the next Mahabhakta, I would like to ask, when you first entered the Mahasamadhi Mandir of Baba, what was your first impression? What was your first experience looking at Baba in the Samadhi Mandir, or maybe the Dwarakamai or the Chavdi? I don't know where you went first. So if you can just let us know your first impression before we go on to the next Mahabhakta, that will be very interesting for us.
I was very much impressed. In fact, I tried to participate in all the rituals, from the Kakadarati in the early morning to the Shejarati at night. I tried to participate in all the rituals. One of the most important experiences for me was in the Dwarkamai, in the masjid, when I saw the famous oil portrait of Sai Baba, which is very powerful. And as all devotees know, the piercing eyes of Shirdi Sai in that painting, where he seems to be alive, are very powerful. Is a very powerful experience. And so I remember that in particular, and also the great emotion and having the possibility of going just right at the Samadhi, because on following days, I was able, with Mr. Baldev Girme, I was able to accompany him and Appa Boravke, that every day brought roses to the Samadhi of Sai Baba to honor him with his roses. And I was able to accompany them and be at the Samadhi and prostrate myself at the Samadhi. And it was a very, very intense and powerful experience too. I would mention these two, first of all.
Yeah, very blessed, very beautiful. So we'll go with the next devotee that you met, Marthanda Malzapati, the son of Bhagat Malzapati. So if you can let us know a summary of your conversation with him, what struck you the most about what he said, that will be very helpful.
Well, Marthanda was very old he claimed to be 108 or 107 in 1985. Actually, Uddao told me that he was around 90 or 92. And according to other sources, he was probably 88 or 89. But in any case, he was very old, very frail, and he couldn't speak too long. So I went to interview him, I think twice, because he couldn't speak for a long length of time. He had some problems in that. I remember he stressed the point that in his own house was the samadhi of his father, Malzapati,
Yes.
that the special characteristic of his house was that in the very house there was the samadhi of his father. And he also stressed the point that he served Sai Baba and the Sansthan his whole life. He underlined the fact that he was always very, very close to Sai Baba, always near him, and always trying to be helpful and serving the master, so that he was constantly up and down the place where Sai Baba was living at the masjid, and his family would never eat before first offering the food to Shirdi Sai at lunch, and only after they would have their own meals. And he also insisted on the issue of service and on the oneness of God and the brotherhood of men. He pointed out also the fact that the masjid, Sai Baba renamed the masjid Dwarkamai, that is the mother open to all, Sai Baba being beyond any institutionalized religions, so that Marthanda emphasized the fact that Sai Baba was really a figure that in a way everyone could relate to, because he was beyond any separation. He was against separation of caste, separation of wealth, separation of religion, but he regarded everyone as equal, and thus he stressed these points of the oneness of God and the brotherhood of men, on the oneness of human nature, the oneness of being, in a way along the lines of Advaita and of course of bhakti. And so I remember these points. He also presented to me various photographs and souvenir and paraphernalia that belonged to his father and were linked to Shirdi Sai. So that was very interesting. He had several pictures of himself and his father and his mother with Sai. And so that was also a most important visit for me. I should add the fact that even the house of Uddao was, of course, the same house where his father Shama used to live. And so even the house of Uddao was considered to be very holy. And in fact, while I had these interviews, both with Uddao and Marthanda, many people used to come to their houses to pay their pranams and to ask for their blessings, because they were regarded, in fact, as saintly figures themselves.
Oh, very, very good. Coming back to Uddhav Rao a little bit, I read in your book there was a mention about Shama's finger and the snake bite. I mean, if you can talk a little bit about that and what you gleaned from that, that will be helpful.
I think this story is also reported in other sources or in the Shri Sai Satcharita. In any case, the gist of the story is that Uddao was bitten, or actually his father, Shama, was bitten by a snake. And so he was in great trouble, of losing his life. And so he was brought to Shirdi Sai, to Sai. And Sai, in a way, scared away the poison by strong words, by even abusing words against the poison, that in fact shortly after abated. And the only in a way trace of the poison that was left was that the little finger of one of Shama's hands remained black until the end of his life, if I remember correctly. This is basically the story. And as you know, there are many other stories similar to this in the sources about Shirdi Sai saving various people from mortal diseases, like in this case, by the power of his will and of his Shakti.
So that what was very interesting is, as you rightly said, it is the story of Shama's little finger being bitten isn't the Sacharita, but the fact that his finger remained black for the rest of his life was a testament to, his being bitten, and the poison in his finger stopped right at the little finger itself. So we'll move on to the next Mahabhakta. There are so many Mahabhaktas, but we'll just go with Ram Baba. Ram Baba, just for the benefit of the listeners, his name is directly not mentioned in the Satcharit, but he is actually the sadhak of yoga. And for people who read the Satcharita, they will know who I'm talking about. When Baba was eating onion and bhakri, the sadhak of yoga thought, what will a saint who eats onion, how will a saint that eats onion help me? And that your sadhak of yoga is Ram Baba. So Dr. Antonio, if you can tell us a little bit more about Ram Baba. There's not a lot of information that the Sai devotees know, and you personally met Ram Baba. And from what little I know of him, he had a very commanding presence and a commanding language as well. If you can talk a little bit about your experience with him, what he taught you, what he talked about, that will be very interesting for us.
Well, I was first introduced to Swami Ram Baba by Mr. Baldev Girme. He was instrumental for me to get to know the Swami and to learn about his life. In fact, Mr. Baldev Girme read to me and translated into English to me an article on Swami Ram Baba that had appeared in the Sai Leela issue. And he also gave me 2 addresses of Swami Ram Baba in Bombay. And he told me that I should not miss this opportunity of meeting Swami Ram Baba, because he would surely offer a lot of information on Shirdi Sai, his life and teachings. So I was very impressed, also because of the fact that, as you know, Swami Ram Baba was very, very, very old. Apparently, he was more than 120 years old at the time. So I was very keen in trying to see him. So when I left Shirdi after about 2 weeks of being around Shirdi and having completed all the possible interviews I could make and see the various places, I went back to Bombay. I went back to this friend of mine of the Agrawal family. And through him, we searched for the whereabouts of Swami Ram Baba. And finally, we found where he resided. And so one evening, we went to have a satsang with him, a meeting with him, which was very, very impressive. In fact, we were not alone with him. There were about 20 or 30 other people in a private house. He was very imposing. His presence could be really felt. He had a great charisma. He was very tall, with white long hair and white beard. And he spoke English. He spoke fluent English. And he discussed on various spiritual topics more in general. And I would here like to mention three things that I remember particularly. The first thing that I would like to mention is that he underlined the fact that no words can really describe the experience of being in Sai Baba's presence. He again emphasized Sai Baba's look, Sai Baba's eyes, and he said that no one could really penetrate the mystery of Sai and the depth of Sai. Again, emphasizing that Sai Baba was one with God, an avatar, a Satpurush. And so he underlined this element, and he linked this to the fact that there is no other scripture that is more sacred to him than the Shri Sai Satcharita. He emphasized this, saying that the fundamental source for entering in a communion and in a spiritual communion with Shirdi Sai is to do the reading, the parayana of the Shri Sai Satcharita, because for him, again, it is the most authoritative and sacred scripture of all times. Then the second point I remember is that he wanted to emphasize the fact that spirituality and science are not opposed, are not juxtaposed. He mentioned the fact that all our life is in a way ruled by scientific laws. He also spoke a lot of computers, and this really was something so surprising for me, because I was born in 1962, and while he was talking, I was thinking to myself, well, when I was born in 1962, this man was around already 100 years old, and here he is talking about Advaita spirituality and linking it to computer science and to technology, which was really something I did not expect. And third, he underlined again the fact that Sai Baba was an integrative saint. His spirituality was and emphasized the oneness of the whole of humanity, as in the saying "Sabka Malik Ek," that the Lord of all is one, and that we should strive to live in a way that through our lives, in a practical way, the oneness of God and the brotherhood of men are constantly lived out, spelled out, not in theory, but again in practice. And I think this is most important, in fact. And as Sai Baba himself used to say, his religion was Kabir. I remember a famous source where Sai Baba was once asked his religion, about what religion he belonged, and he answered Kabir, who was the model, the paradigm of this kind of integrative spirituality, which in modern and contemporary times Shirdi Sai represented and represents in full. So these are my memories. But of course, you can find all the details in the book, which I mean, you can all download for free. I hope it may be of interest and of use to all Sai Bhaktas. I wrote it in the spirit of sharing these testimonies with all the devotees who are interested in Shirdi Sai, and also the scholars who study the saint's life and teachings. Because I had these tapes for many years in my desk, and I thought it was a sin to just don't share these testimonies with all the people who are interested in Shirdi Sai and who are devotees of Sai. So finally, I decided to work on them, and prepare this book for all Sai Bhaktas. So I really hope you may find it of some interest.
Thank you very much. For the benefit of the listeners and viewers, I have already shared the link to the book in the Zoom chat, as well as in the description of the YouTube channel. The excerpt, the book is very wonderful. In addition to the book, there are audio excerpts of Sri Antonio's interviews with all the Mahabhaktas, and the excerpt of Ram Baba's speech is really very wonderful, and I read it and I was really moved by it. Yeah, thank you for giving us that.
I must say one last thing about Swami Ram Baba. He was really the only one that didn't want me to photograph him, and did not want me to tape his conversation. He said that I should rather do click in my heart and take no photographs. So what I did, as soon as the satsang, the meeting ended, I isolated myself in a room and just recorded my own voice with all my impressions of that evening, so to capture them and not lose them. So that's the reason why in the book you don't find this presentation as being an interview, but rather my summary of the things Swami Ram Baba said during the meeting, because I could not actually tape his satsang, his conversation.
Yeah, and thanks to you, Dr. Antonio. I think you also mentioned that Ram Baba was very fluent in English, and your conversation with him was in English. And his English.
Yes, well, he spoke in English for about 40 minutes. Then there were a couple of questions and answers. He asked about my research, and I told him I had just returned from Shirdi, and I mentioned to him the names of Mr. Baldev Girme and other people who had given me also some offerings to give Swami Ram Baba. So I granted him these things, and he was very pleased. In fact, he was very happy to hear about my research, and he gave me his blessings, and he advised me to continue doing my research and my studies, and try to go more and more in depth with my understanding of Shirdi Sai. So he was extremely nice to me, and very I mean, he was a saint. He was a wonderful person, and I can only say that I was really blessed to be in his presence and to receive his own ashirvad, his blessings.
Yeah, and yeah, it's so wonderful that just with Baba's darshan and just the thought coming into his head, that Baba is eating onion with bhakri, and Baba reading his mind, and just saying that only one who can digest onion should eat it. It's like just with that, he was so impressed. It just shows the greatness of Baba's darshan, of course, and it also shows the level with that just one simple sentence, how Ram Baba had transformed his life into becoming so saintly. So it is a testament of of course, Baba's greatness of darshan, as well as Swami Ram Baba's greatness as well. Thank you so much.
Yes, again, beyond words, very few words were spoken, but that darshan changed his life. And this is the common experience of many Sai Bhaktas, that going to Shirdi or having an experience of Shirdi Sai have their whole life transformed. And this is the power of the Sadguru.
Yeah, and one more thing I would like, what impressed me most, Dr. Antonio, is how clearly you brought out the fact that there were no specific mantras or teachings of Baba, but it was their way of life, it was their way of service, it was their absolute belief in Baba that came across so evidently to you, and you explained that so beautifully. It's definitely a lesson for all of us.
Yes, this is the thing that struck me right from the first day, because I realized my approach was too intellectual, and I was wrong. And of course, I could only learn from the devotees and from the old villagers, and to understand what was at the core of their relationship with Shirdi Sai, with Sai Baba. And the core of this relation was love. And the experience of these people was of this extraordinary love that Shirdi Sai had for them, even for the very small details of their worldly life. Shirdi Sai took care of them in all details, and they would reciprocate this extraordinary love, prema, of Shirdi Sai by service and by bhakti. So there was not any big question of particular teachings or mantras. There was no mantra, no upadesha in a technical sense, but the secret, the key of their relationship was based on surrender to the Guru, as one would surrender to God, because the Guru is God. And once you have this approach of surrendering your life, your tan man dan, as they would say, yeah? Your body and your all and your mind to the Guru, then nothing else needs to be done, because he takes care of everything. And so this spirit of bhakti, of constant remembering the Lord, and of service to the Lord and to one's brothers, is really at the core of the spiritual experience, so that nothing else is really required. And so you just go back to the couplet of Nishta and Saburi, that is of placing your heart, your faith in the Guru, in the Lord, and be patient, be courageous, and leave everything to him.
Yeah, very, very beautifully said, and very true. So we'll, I would like to cover a few more devotees, those who actually saw Baba, and two of them that come to my mind are Tukaram Borauke, whom you refer to as Appa Borauke. There's not a lot of mention of Appa Borauke in the Sacharit, so not a lot of Sai devotees might be aware of him. And the other was also Bappa Baba, the son of Lakshman Mama, as well. So if you can, give us a summarization of your conversation with Appa Borauke, and you mentioned about him offering roses at the Samadhi every day, and then a little bit on Bappa Baba as well. That would be very helpful.
Well, Appa Borauke was presented to me again, thanks to Mr. Baldev Girme, who took me to his house. And he was a very important landowner, a very wealthy man, he and his family. because they possessed important acres of land around Shirdi. He had met Sai Baba in his youth, but had settled in Shirdi only after the Mahasamadhi. So he didn't tell me particular experiences that he had directly with Sai Baba, but he mentioned that the most important thing I remember he told us was that during a crisis, an existential crisis he had which concerned also his family and the difficult situation involving also his business and his life, he went to the Samadhi Mandir asking Shirdi Sai to please help him through this terrible situation. And from then onwards, things completely changed. And this change in the situation, of course, he understood to be due to the grace, to the sankalpa of Shirdi Sai. And so he became such a staunch devotee that he decided to settle in Shirdi, or very near the village of Shirdi, just to be near Sai Baba for the rest of his life. So this is why every day for decades, I think, he used to bring fresh roses and flowers to the Samadhi to honor him. I remember also another incident concerning Appa, and this is the fact that many revered him as a saint. I remember I was told the story of people coming from Delhi, the devotees of Shirdi Sai coming from Delhi, that had a dream in which Shirdi Sai told them to honor Appa when they would reach Shirdi. And so Appa mentioned to me the fact that he was so astounded when these people turned to his house and wanted to worship him. And he said, "Why do you want to worship me? Go to the Samadhi Mandir and worship Sai, not me." And so then they related to him this dream that they had had. And so word spread out, and I suppose everyone in Shirdi in the 80s or even 70s, 80s knew about Appa, and he was revered as a great saint himself. And in fact, he was part and parcel of the institution of Shirdi. That is, he was one of the members of the Sansthan, and one of the important members of the Sansthan. And with regard to Bappa Baba, well, again, you can find all the details in the book. I remember he mentioned the fact that Sai Baba looked at his very worldly needs by giving him some money from the dakshina he received almost on a regular basis. He also showed to me some coins he had kept as relics of Shirdi Sai, that Shirdi Sai had himself given to him to keep. And so even if he spent most of these gifts, these dakshina, for his economic needs, he also kept some of these small coins as in a way mementos of Shirdi Sai's presence and grace toward him. He was an important figure, and his interviews are very interesting and inspiring. He told me several significant stories. In fact, all these great people, these old people, had their own stories to tell, very practical, very down-to-earth stories concerning their lives, how Sai Baba helped them and people they knew through his compassion, through his grace. And so it's very interesting to read through because, as you said, one gets a sense of the kind of sambandha, of the kind of link or connection that characterizes one's own link to the Guru, and more important, the link of the Guru to his bhakta, because of course that is fundamental. And so I think listening to their words and even to their voices through the audio recordings can be very inspiring to all Sai Bhaktas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would like to, for the benefit of the listeners and the viewers, Bappa Baba was the son of Lakshman Mama, Lakshman Ratnaparke. He was the maternal uncle of Shama. And his mention is there in the Satcharit as well. So just for the benefit of the viewers. Also, I would like to mention there are beautiful pictures that Dr. Antonio has captured and put in his book. And you can see these devotees and also Bappa Baba, and I believe there is a picture of the coin that Baba had given him as well in the book. So
yeah.
I would encourage all of you to go look at the book, read the book, or listen to the audios, which are very informative.
All the pictures, all the photographs were taken during that trip in 1985. And there are some interesting aspects of these pictures because, for instance, Uddhav is seen with the statue of Ganapati behind him, a statue that Shirdi Sai had gifted him, for instance. And even all the pictures, in a way, capture the spirit and the atmosphere of those days and of those years. Yes, all the materials in the book are from that field research trip.
Yeah, and now coming to another devotee. This devotee was not living during Baba's time, but he lived in Shirdi for more than 30 years. And quite a few of the Sai devotees know him, but he might not be very well known amongst all. And you had the opportunity to have a very long conversation with him, Dr. Antonio, and this is Shivanesan Swami. And I think it would be very interesting for the users to get a summarization of your conversation with him, because I believe he was also called Chavdi Baba. He lived in the Chavdi. He did service in the Chavdi for a very long time. So you had a long conversation with him, and which is given in your book. If you can summarize for us your conversations with him and your learnings from Shivanesan Swami and some salient points, that would be great.
Yes, well, I was directed to Shivanesan Swami by some people of the Sanskrit because I was inquiring about some other figures of devotees and of gurus themselves, like Shri Narayana Baba and Bashir Baba. And at the Sanskrit, they told me that I should speak to Shivanesan Swami, whom they called Shivner Swami, in fact, to me. And they said that he was the keeper of the Chavdi, so I should go to the Chavdi and ask about him, and I would find him there. So, in fact, there I went. I went to the Chavdi, and I had the opportunity of meeting with him. He was extremely nice. We had a very, very long conversation with him, very instructive. My main translator was another ascetic who lived in Shirdi at the time. His name was Shekarao, Swami Shekarao. In fact, he was my main interpreter while I was in Shirdi. And I like to remember him. He was a wonderful man. And through him, we went to the Chavdi and had this long conversation with Shivanesan Swami. What I remember most is that he underlined the fact that in the beginning, he really did not want to come to Shirdi because, in a way, he thought that he should find another kind of spiritual path. He was linked, if I remember correctly, to Nityananda of Ganeshpuri, and he mentioned the fact that Nityananda told him that he should go to Shirdi because Sai Baba was his own Sadguru, but he resisted to this for 2 or 3 times until one night he had a very real, intense dream in which Nityananda appeared to him and requested him to leave Nasik, where he was staying, and go right away to Shirdi because he should go to his Sadguru, and his Sadguru was Sai Baba. And so he eventually decided to go. And so he started his way from Nasik on foot. And he mentioned the various tribulations he had during this journey from Nasik to Shirdi, mostly done on foot without any possessions because he lived as a sannyasin already. And so he finally reached Shirdi, and finally he settled there for once and for all. And he found his peace of mind in Shirdi and surrendered himself completely to Sai, and in fact became the keeper of the Chawadi. And he was living in Shirdi already I think from the 70s perhaps. He lived there for many years, and I know he practically lived his entire life in Shirdi. He eventually died and is considered a saint in his own terms. So I didn't know, of course, at the time that he was such a revered person, but speaking to him, I could clearly see that he was a special person, and that he was very, very much into leading a life of detachment, of vairagya, and of intense faith in Shirdi Sai. So I was again very much blessed to meet him and listen to his story. And of course, all the details of this long story you can find in the book.
Yes, thank you. And also, what struck me most about your conversation with him was, of course, the simplicity with which he answered. He, as you said, you never knew that he was a great personality unless you heard from others. And in his conversations also, it was so matter of fact and so simple. So that struck me as well when I listened to the conversation that you had with him. And I would just like to briefly, one of the things that was very interesting for me was also your interview with Uttam Patil, who is Tatya Kote Patil's son. Quite honestly, I don't think a lot of the Sai devotees know a lot about Tatya Kote Patil's family. They know about Tatya Kote Patil because his mention is there in quite a few places in the Satcharit. If you can just briefly let us know your conversation with Uttam Patil ji, and anything interesting for the Sai devotees, that would be great.
Well, Tatya Kote Patil, as you know, was a most important figure because he was very, very, very close to Sai Baba. His family and himself were very close. He used to sleep on alternate nights together with Sai, he, Malzapati, and Tatya Kote Patil. And so he was very intimate with Sai Baba. And again, I remember during the conversation with him, he remembered the fact that his father could have no issue. This, again, was a very common situation. I mean, people would go to Shirdi Sai asking him to have a son to please have issue, because that was and is one of the most important graces that people ask from saints. And so it came that in the end, Tatya Kote Patil succeeded in having issue, and the person I interviewed, in fact, was one of the sons that Tatya Kote Patil got through Sai Baba's grace. I think I'm right if I remember that, and you can see it also in the book, the way Shirdi Sai blessed his father was by giving him a bag, which was symbolic of pregnancy. And in fact, I was able to photograph this sacket, this bag, and which I interpret to be symbolic of pregnancy. And he was so nice to also make me a gift of a precious relic of this bag. He took out the scissors from his desk within his house, and cut a small piece for me to keep as a token of grace. And so I was very happy to be given that relic of that sack. And so I remembered this clearly. And also, again, he insisted on the fact that he had served his father, and then he himself had served the Sanskrit their whole life without asking for anything. In fact, he underlined that even before the Sanskrit was institutionalized, his father used to take care of Shirdi as a pilgrimage place in the 30s and 40s. And then he continued along with what his father did, even when the Sanskrit was organized. And so I tried, of course, to make all sorts of different questions to all these people that I met. I had, as I mentioned in the beginning, a very long list of questions. But in the end, I decided to just let them say whatever they thought was important to say, to tell to me, because they were the experts. And I was just there very humbly to listen to what they have to tell me and what they thought to be important. So in the end, I abandoned all my set of questions and really had an open conversation with them, where they were just free to tell me what they thought to be most important. For instance, sometimes I inquired quite even with too much insistence on the teachings, or about the origins of Shirdi Sai, or about the fact if he was a Hindu or a Muslim. And all these issues, of course, were useless in a way, and were not at all significant, again, because they avoided all theoretical issues, all things that were of secondary or any importance, and stuck to the essentials, which were having to do with their own lives and the way Shirdi Sai had guided them throughout their lives, and continued to inspire them throughout their daily lives and existence.
Yeah, and of course, as you mentioned, Tatya Kote Patil was a very, very, very special Mahabhakta of Baba, who spent time and years with Baba at close quarters. So it's just amazing to me that there's so much very little known about the families and their way of life. It's so instructive, like him just taking out the scissors and cutting a piece of it, the generosity, the sharing, the caring. it's really amazing. I want to let the viewers and the listeners know that there is a picture of this bag as well in your book. And everybody can take a look at the bag. And in fact, even in Shirdi, they have a small temple in their house today, wherein they keep the bag enclosed in a glass case, and Sai devotees can actually take darshan of it as well. So it's a very it's a very beautiful thing that you explained. We'll just go a little bit outside Shirdi, because I think there was another Mahabhakta of Baba who lived outside of Shirdi. And there is a lot of information in your book about the Sakuri ashram. And of course, I'm referring to Upasani Maharaj, another Mahabhakta of Baba. And Doctor, I know you met with Godavari Mata. You had actually a darshan with her. And you also spoke to, Tipnis ji, who gave you a very long conversation on the Kanyakumari ashram, and about Upasani Maharaj himself. If you can briefly summarize for us your experiences in Sakuri, your impressions, that will be, informative to our listeners and viewers.
I had a wonderful time in Sakuri. I was there 3 times. The first time I went with Mr. Girme, and what struck me is the fact that whereas Shirdi was very noisy and bustling with the people because everyone was coming in for the Mahasamadhi celebrations, Shirdi, that is just a few miles away from Sakuri, that is just a few miles away from Shirdi, was very silent and really kind of secluded place. So it was a kind of a contrast and was very nice to visit. And of course, Sakuri is important as the place of the ashram that was founded by Upasani Maharaj. And I often also asked about Upasani to all the villagers of Shirdi if they had any memories about him. But when I arrived in Sakuri, I met with 2 people in particular, one named Shankar Goravke, who was one of the people entrusted with the preparation, with the gifting of money for the performance of yagyas, because as you know, in Sakuri, there is an intense activity of performing yag or yagyas, that is sacrifices according to the Vedic rules that the kanyas perform. So when I reached there the first time, all the kanyas were busy together with Sati Godavari Mataji, the performance of a particularly elaborate yagya, if I remember correctly, in the honor of Krishna. And so this first person, Shankar Goravke, explained to me in a way that the practice of the yagya during the whole year, what were the main sacrifices that were performed at the Sakuri ashram, their importance, and the lifestyle of the kanyas, their education, the way they received their tutorship from Sati Godavari. So it was a kind of very instructive, in a way, resume of the main activities that were going on at the ashram. And then, as you said, I had the good opportunity of speaking with the secretary of the ashram, who at the time was Mr. Tipnis. He was extremely nice to me. We had a very, very long conversation in which he explained to me the ins and outs of the practices of the yagyas and the rules that characterize the ashram. He was an intellectual, a scholar himself, and so he gave to me his own ideas on Upasani and on the parampara from Sai Baba to Upasni, and from Upasni to Sati Godavari. And in fact, I had the good opportunity, the blessing of having darshan of Sati Godavari Mata several times during those visits. Although I could not speak directly to her, these were silent darshans. And I know Sati Godavari had asked Tipnis to talk to me about Shirdi Sai and Upasni, because also she was very much busy with all these yagyas that were performed. So I had also the chance of staying there for a whole day and witnessing all the various celebrations, the dances, the kirtans, the rituals that were performed by the kanyas during the day. And it was also very, very instructive. And of course, I could visit the various places sanctified by Upasni in Sakuri, the temples he had built along with the ashram, the Datta temple. And what impressed me particularly, I remember on my first visit to Sakuri, was to see the pinjra, that is the cage where Upasni secluded himself for practicing his tapas. And that made a strong impression on me because I could see it with my own eyes. And so it was really a really useful, important visit. And as I mentioned, I went there 3 times, and I was also able to gather important sources, books, and other materials about Upasni, his speeches, his discourses that are all nicely collected in the Sakuri Ashram library and bookstore. So for me, it was important also to gather the more material I could get on Shirdi, on Upasni, on Meher Baba, and on all the various figures that were linked to Shirdi Sai. So going to Sakuri was really a wonderful opportunity, and again, a great blessing. One last thing I recall with pleasure is that I remember going on foot from Sakuri to go back to Shirdi.
Wow.
And there was this beautiful beautiful way. I mean, we would just walk several miles at the sun was setting at sunset, and it was beautiful just to walk from Sakuri to Shirdi. And I remember that time with great pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I would also like to mention that in the book, there is your excerpts of your interviews with Balaji Pillaji Gurau, who was also who also lived during Baba's time and had interactions with Baba, as well as Godkarji. He was also there when Baba was alive. And I believe you've also interviewed the Lakshmi Bai Shinde family as well, and you took darshan of her samadhi as well. So there is so many beautiful excerpts and audios in the book that I would strongly urge all the listeners and the viewers to go take a look at the book as well as the audios. There is a treasure of information. It's all gems about Baba. You get to know more about Baba, his greatness, the greatness of darshan, his teachings, and how it was lived by all these Mahabhaktas. But before we go to the ending questions, Dr. Antonio, I would like to ask you if there's anything within your conversations with Balaji Pillaji Gurau or Godkarji or even Lakshmi Bai Shinde's family, if there's anything that stood out to you that will be interesting or instructive rather to us.
Well, one thing I remember when several of the people told me of their experience of Sai Baba being one with the other people, with the whole world of nature, with animals, with nature as a whole. That is, they gave various examples of Baba's omnipresence, in other words, magnifying Sai Baba's teaching of non-dualism, not through any intellectual means, but very practically. Like, for instance, when one of the villagers told me that Shirdi Sai would take an illness, the buboes of a plague, on himself, and thus saved the life of one of his devotees. For example, I remember Marthanda telling me about his mother that was saved by Sai in this very spectacular way, in the sense that he took on himself her own illness. And these episodes, these miracles, these chamatkar, if you wish, of Sai taking upon himself the illnesses of his devotees were extremely powerful. Or else I remember another episode in which one of them mentioned to me the fact that while preparing the food to offer to Shirdi Sai, a dog came and spoiled it by eating some of it. And for this reason, they decided to beat mercilessly that poor dog because he had spoiled the food. And once they came to the masjid with their food offerings, Sai Baba, of course, would be very stern with them and refuse their food, saying that he had been coming to their house in the form of the dog, and they hadn't recognized him. They had beaten him up, and he showed on his own body the beating that the dog had received. Again, this is another very, very powerful instance of showing the oneness of the divine, and the fact that Sai's spirit, Sai's principle, the Guru Tattva, if you wish, is everywhere. That is his omnipresence. And again, teaching a lesson in compassion, in mercy, and on the point that, highlighting the point that the presence of Sai and the presence of God is everywhere in all creatures, even the ones that we consider low or that we despise, are really the treasure house of Sai and are in fact our own brothers and sisters. So I remember these episodes with great emotion, also because, again, they were so powerful. Even when these old villagers communicated them to me in their own words, giving their own examples, and it was really something very touching as well. And so the example of the dogs and the example of the various illnesses that Sai took upon himself are, of course, one more instance of his extraordinary compassion for all his bhaktas.
Thank you. Actually, the information in your book and the treasure, the lessons that we can learn from it is a real treasure to all Sai devotees. It's really a gem, because in today's world, wherein there is a lot of crowd in Shirdi, there is a lot of information out there, getting the first-hand information from Baba devotees, getting to learn and hear what Baba actually said and the difference he made in these people's lives is amazing, and it is a testament to Baba's greatness, in a very small way. I mean, um, so the other thing that I would that also struck me is, I mean, it's obviously a very great blessing, in my humble opinion, that that was conferred by Baba on you. Not only to have these experiences, but also to be present during his Punyatiti. It was
Yeah.
like you were present in the Punyatiti, and you also participated in the activities of the Punyatiti. And I just wanted to call that out. Is there anything you would like to say about that?
Yes, absolutely. I took part in all the rituals, in the evening processions, in all the artis, and of course in all the important celebrations of the Punyatiti. So for me, it was mind blowing, because you must understand that I was only 22 or 23 at the time, and I had already been to India, but I never had such uh, an experience before in my life. So it was really everything new for me, and a constant source of inspiration and a constant blessing. I tried to absorb the more I could from all these experiences and all these possibilities of participating in all these rituals and in all these activities. What I remember particularly, I enjoyed so much were the songs, the kirtan, the artis. In fact, I remember before leaving, I enjoyed them. I liked them so much that I bought myself many tapes. In those days, there were tapes of the main kirtans and the main artis that were sung, and so just to keep those on record for me, I tried to buy all the bhajans and artis in tapes that I could find, and I would always listen to them even when I got back home in Italy. So yes, the rituals were very, very moving and inspiring. What inspired me most, of course, was to see the devotion of the people, in the masjid, at the Chawadi, and especially in the Samadhi Mandir. And Shirdi was very, very crowded in those days. And there were thousands and thousands of people. And also it was interesting for me to see that I was practically the only Westerner present, because that is also something that, I noted particularly because in 1985, I did not meet any other non-Indian or Westerner in Shirdi. I was the only one. And in fact, many people looked at me with great curiosity and came to me asking, inquiring about what brought me to Sai and to Shirdi. And so also this was kind of interesting to me, because everyone would spot me out as being non-Indian, of course. And but this was also something stimulating, because in this way I got to know many people, even during the celebrations, that would approach me, would tell me about their own experiences, would give me their advice. And in fact, some of these short interviews with common people I have also included in the book. Even when people, for instance, went to pay their homage to Marthanda or to other old villagers, and I met them there, I also took the time to have some kind of short conversation with these other people. And I also tried, of course, to talk and to have an overview of Shirdi as a pilgrimage place from the Sanskrit people. So I tried on various occasions to speak to the people of the Sanskrit, and I also, I had one in particular, one useful conversation with the secretary of the Sanskrit at the time.
Okay, thank you. And I would like to let the viewers and the listeners know they would not be surprised that Dr. Antonio is basically a treasure house of knowledge on Baba and Dattatreya as well. I would like to mention that he has some of his other work like New Findings on Shirdi Sai Baba, a review in Heritage of Shirdi Sai. It's a Guru Purnima issue. And then he has also written a lot of articles on Dattatreya as well. Dr. Antonio, would you like to talk a little bit about your other works on Baba and Dattatreya so that people are aware that these works exist and, it might be very instructive and informative for them as well. If you can give us a brief idea on those.
Well, that first field research in 1985 was really a starting point for me, because I was just beginning to learn and to study about the life and teachings of Sai Baba, and one thing brought to the other. So my whole life, my whole even teaching career has been focused on learning more and more on the Sai Baba movement and on Shirdi Sai. I have continued to study on these issues, and as you say, I have written several articles and also a few books on these various issues, and of course on Dattatreya, because as soon as I reached Bombay and Maharashtra, I realized what a great importance Datta has and the Datta Sampradaya has in Maharashtra. And particularly, I realized that most of the Hindu bhaktas of Sai Baba revered and revere Shirdi Sai as an avatar of Datta. And this is precisely what inspired me to study Datta, the Datta Sampradaya. And in fact, I dedicated my PhD thesis to Dattatreya. And in fact, I published a book from that thesis in 1993, which is a monograph on Dattatreya. And so in a way, I should say that the life and teachings of Shirdi Sai, in a way, inspired my whole study life to this day. And all the books and articles I have written basically, in a way, are something that are pieces of research that are all linked or connected to Shirdi Sai in the end, or I mean, are closely linked to aspects of his life and teachings. So even the Datta work I've done, the work I've done on researching on Dattatreya and the main tirthas of Datta in Maharashtra, starting with Gangapur and many other places, are all in a way a consequence of my being blessed in a way by Shirdi himself, Shirdi Sai himself, to continue my research and try to emerge myself into this ocean of wisdom and spirituality. And so these are all interrelated researches in a way.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. It is very evident that Baba's grace, is on you, that you were able to do so much. And it's been such a wonderful conversation, because I didn't even realize that it's been more than an hour. It's been an hour and a half since we started talking. It was just, there's still so much more to cover, but this was such a beautiful, such an informative conversation. And for people who are asking, can we get a link to the additional articles? Dr. Antonio has kindly agreed to, allow me to kind of share with you the articles that he has shared with me. And I will be doing that in the WhatsApp groups as well. And Dr. Antonio, I believe that they can share it in their WhatsApp groups to their friends and relatives as well.
Absolutely. I can send them to you, and you can share them with all the people who might be interested. These are articles on Shirdi Sai Baba or on Datta. They are in English. And of course, I would be happy if people, everyone could read them if they find it of interest, and eventually be in touch with you and with me. And so I can simply send them to you, and you can share them with all the bhaktas that might be interested in them.
Yes. And I think, Dr. Antonio, if you're okay, we can also share your contact information should any of the bhaktas have any questions, that they can contact you via email or whatever is your preference.
Yes. Absolutely. They can write to me an email, and I will be happy to be in touch with them. My email address is a.rigo@unive.it. I repeat that, a.rigo@unive.it.
Thank you. I will also put that in the WhatsApp groups, as well as in the description of the YouTube video, because the YouTube video is going to be long-lived, and people can get that information even at any point in time that they would like.
Sure.
So while there is a lot more questions that we would like to cover due to the lateness in India as well, we will conclude this beautiful satsang at this time. I will end the live call right now. Again, I would like to thank you. Dhanyavad. Thank you. It was an honor, and it was a delightful conversation, so informative and so blessed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure for me to share these reminiscences and thoughts with you.